And you ain't it? You think you can just walk in here and take over?
This isn't your territory anymore.
We need to resolve this now. Your actions have—
Well aware, but this is not the time for ultimatums.
What happens when a woman with nothing to lose looks a monster in the eye and refuses to blink? That's what happened the night Nia told Tokyo's youngest Yakuza heir to pay his tab. Because in Tokyo's underworld, there are rules everyone follows. Rule number 1, never disrespect a Yamamoto. Nia Carter broke that rule in under 60 seconds. And what happened next took 60 days to destroy her, and a lifetime to understand. This is a story about courage that costs everything. About a woman who refused to be invisible even when invisibility meant survival. So, if stories like this move you, stories about strength, defiance, and the price of dignity, please subscribe and kindly comment the country you're watching from. Because what comes next will break your heart before it puts it back together. And you'll want to see how a woman who had everything to lose became the one thing a monster couldn't destroy. Nia didn't know she was signing her own death warrant the night she pointed her finger in Kenji Yamamoto's face. She was just doing her job managing Eclipse, the hottest nightclub in Tokyo. A place she'd clawed her way into after 3 years of being invisible in a city that never wanted to see her. 3 years of proving that a Black American woman could earn respect in a world built to keep her out. But that night, when the cold-eyed man in the tailored suit walked in with his tattooed enforcers, drank the most expensive whiskey like it was water, and stood to leave without paying, something inside her snapped. She stepped in front of him, pointed her finger inches from his face, and said the words that would change everything. "You will pay, or you will leave your watch, your rings, and your dignity on this bar." The music stopped. His men reached for their weapons. The entire club held its breath. He stared at her, this untouchable prince of Tokyo's underworld, shocked that anyone, especially this foreign woman, would dare. Then he threw money on the bar and walked out. Everyone told her she just made the worst mistake of her life. They were right. Because Kenji Yamamoto wasn't just a customer. He was the heir to the Yamamoto Kai, one of Japan's most powerful Yakuza families. A man who'd never been told no. A man who didn't forgive disrespect. And Nia had just humiliated him in front of his entire crew. The question wasn't if he would destroy her, it was how. But to understand how Nia became someone who refused to bow, you need to know who she was before that night. Before the pointing finger, before she walked into a war she didn't know existed. You need to know her story. 3 years ago, Nia Carter stepped off a plane at Narita Airport with $800 in her pocket, a culinary school diploma, and a dream that wouldn't let her sleep. She was 25 years old, African American, alone in a country where she didn't speak the language, didn't know a single soul, and couldn't even read the signs pointing her toward the exit. But she'd fallen in love with Japanese culture, the precision, the respect, the way every detail mattered. She'd saved for 2 years, working double shifts at diners in Atlanta, just to get here. Tokyo was supposed to be her fresh start, the place where she'd finally become someone who mattered. The city had other plans. Those first months were hell. Doors slammed in her face before she could even finish introducing herself. No foreigners. Position filled. Sometimes they didn't even bother with excuses, just shook their heads and turned away when they saw her skin. The culinary degree she'd worked so hard for? Worthless. Restaurant owners took one look at her and decided a Black woman couldn't possibly understand Japanese cuisine. She lived in a closet-sized apartment in a neighborhood where rent was cheap because nobody else wanted to stay there. Some nights, she ate instant ramen for dinner and breakfast. Some nights, she didn't eat at all. But Nia refused to go home. Going home meant admitting defeat, meant proving right everyone who'd said, "Tokyo? For a Black girl like you? Baby, you're dreaming." So, she kept knocking on doors. Finally, a nightclub in Roppongi hired her. Not as a chef, not even as a server. As a bartender in the back corner where customers barely noticed her. The pay was terrible. The hours were brutal. Her manager treated her like she was invisible. But Nia showed up early every single shift, stayed late, learned every drink by heart, memorized customer preferences, protected the staff when rowdy patrons got aggressive. She built her reputation one night at a time, and she lived by one unshakable rule. Respect is earned, not given. And it goes both ways. It didn't matter if you were a CEO or a construction worker. If you stepped into her space, you treated it with respect. You treated her times with respect. This principle cost her jobs. Managers told her she was too aggressive, too American, too much. One boss fired her for refusing to serve a man who'd grabbed her coworker's waist. But Nia never compromised. Slowly, painfully slowly, people started to notice her professionalism, her standards, the way she commanded a room without raising her voice. A better club hired her, then a better one after that. And then came Eclipse, Tokyo's hottest nightclub, the place where celebrities partied, where business deals happened in VIP rooms, where being seen meant you'd made it. They offered her the manager position the first time anyone had seen her as more than just the foreign bartender. Nia cried when she got the call. 3 years of fighting, of proving herself, of refusing to disappear, it had finally paid off. She thought she'd made it. Thought she'd finally earned her place in a city that never wanted her. She had no idea the club belonged to an empire she'd never heard of, had no idea that every paycheck came stained with blood she couldn't see. She just knew she'd built something real, something that's hers. The morning after the confrontation, Nia woke up telling herself it would be fine. He was just another entitled customer. She'd dealt with hundreds of them. So what if everyone had looked terrified? People always got dramatic about difficult customers. She went through her normal routine. Coffee at the konbini down the street, an hour at the gym, reviewing tonight's reservations at a cafe near Shibuya Station. Everything was fine. Everything was. Her phone rang. It was Yuki, her assistant manager, the one who never panicked about anything. Nia, Yuki's voice shook. You need to come in, now. What's wrong? Just please, come now. The line went dead. Nia's hands trembled as she unlocked Eclipse's front entrance 20 minutes later. The main floor looked normal, tables clean, bottles stocked, everything in its place. But Yuki was waiting by the office door. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. I'm so sorry, Yuki whispered. I came in early to prep for inventory, and I found... Nia pushed past her into the office and stopped breathing. Her office had been ransacked, not robbed, searched. Papers scattered across the floor. Desk drawers hanging open. Her computer moved, keyboard tilted at an angle she'd never leave it. Personal photos touched, shifted, violated, but nothing was stolen, nothing broken, just searched. Like someone had been looking for something, or leaving a message. And there, in the center of her desk, sat a single black lotus flower. No note, no explanation, just the flower. Petals perfect and dark as midnight, sitting where her coffee mug should be. Nia's legs went weak. Yuki, she whispered, who did this? Her assistant manager's voice cracked. I don't know, but Nia, that man from last night. What about him? Yuki looked at her with something that might have been pity. Or fear. This is just the beginning, isn't it? The black lotus sat there like a promise. Like a threat. Like the opening move in a game Nia didn't know she was playing. Outside, Tokyo hummed with morning traffic, millions of people starting their day, completely unaware that somewhere in this city, a woman's life had just been marked for destruction, and the man who'd marked it was only getting started. 3 days passed before the next blow fell. Nia tried to convince herself the ransacked office was a random break-in. Tokyo was a safe city, but nowhere was perfect. She doubled down on work, threw herself into inventory checks and staff schedules, stayed late every night like she could outwork the creeping dread in her chest. It was Tuesday afternoon when her phone rang. Mr. Sato's name flashed on the screen. Nia-san, please come to my office. Immediately. The way he said it, clipped, nervous, made her stomach drop. 20 minutes later, she sat across from him in his cramped office above a ramen shop. Mr. Sato wouldn't meet her eyes. His hands shook as he shuffled papers on his desk. "There has been a serious discrepancy," he began in careful English. 6 bottles, very rare whiskey. Hibiki 30-year, each worth $2,000. Nia's blood went cold. "What about them?" "They are missing." He finally looked at her, and she saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Fear. "The security footage shows only you accessed the locked cabinet where they were stored." "That's impossible. I logged every bottle myself last week." "The footage does not lie, Nia-san." He pushed a tablet across the desk. The video showed her unlocking the cabinet, though the angle conveniently cut off before showing what she actually did. "Very important people are asking questions about this. Very important people." The way he emphasized those words made her skin crawl. She thought of cold eyes and dragon tattoos. "Mr. Sato, I didn't steal anything. Someone's setting me up. I must suspend you, pending investigation." His voice cracked. "I am sorry, Nia-san, truly, but this is beyond my control." She wanted to argue, to fight, to demand justice. But something in his terrified expression told her it wouldn't matter. This had already been decided. Walking out of Eclipse that day felt like a funeral. Her staff whispered as she passed. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked away. By tomorrow, everyone would think she was a thief. The next week was a systematic dismantling of everything she'd built. Strange men started appearing at the club. Rough-looking patrons who ordered nothing, just sat in corners and watched. Staff members who'd been loyal for years suddenly grew nervous around her. 2 of her best bartenders quit without explanation. Then came the night of the fight. It erupted out of nowhere, a brawl that shattered tables and sent bottles crashing to the floor. Nia tried to break it up, but by the time police arrived, witnesses were already giving statements. According to them, she had started it. She'd been aggressive, unstable, violent. None of it was true, but truth didn't seem to matter anymore. The anonymous calls started that same night. Her phone would ring at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. No words, just heavy breathing. Then silence. Then disconnection. She stopped sleeping. By the 3rd week, Nia's entire world was collapsing. Her landlord suddenly discovered building violations in her apartment, ones that had apparently existed for months but were only now being enforced. Eviction proceedings would begin if she didn't pay for repairs. $3,000 she didn't have. Her bank account was frozen for suspicious activity transfers that she'd never made, from accounts she'd never opened. Friends stopped returning her texts. Colleagues avoided her calls. Even her favorite coffee shop, where she'd been a regular for 2 years, suddenly had the barista look right through her like she didn't exist. She was being erased, piece by piece, person by person. Late one night, walking home through empty streets that usually felt safe, Nia realized she was being followed. The footsteps behind her matched her pace exactly. Speed up, they sped up. Slow down, they slowed down. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She broke into a run. The footsteps ran too. She ducked into an alley, pressing herself against cold brick, trying not to breathe too loud. Silence stretched. Then, running won't help, Nia. The voice was smooth, accented, terrifyingly calm. "I already own every street you walk on." She spun around, but the alley was empty. Only darkness and the echo of her name hanging in the air like smoke. Nia ran all the way home, locked every lock on her door, and finally let herself cry. She'd done nothing wrong. Nothing except demand respect from a man who'd never been told no in his entire life. And now he was taking everything. The suspension lasted exactly 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Nia received a text from Mr. Said. "You can return to work. The matter has been resolved." No explanation, no apology, just permission to return to a job she'd built from nothing, as if it were a privilege being granted rather than a right she'd earned. That night, Eclipse felt different. The usual Tuesday crowd was conspicuously absent. The main floor was nearly empty, and when Nia checked the reservation system, she found the entire VIP section blocked off. Private party, no details, no name. She knew before he arrived. Somehow, she knew. At 11 o'clock, Kenji Yamamoto walked through the entrance alone. No enforcers flanking him, no entourage of dangerous men. Just him moving through her club like he owned it. Because he did. He took a seat at the bar directly in front of her station. Their eyes met, and Nia felt her throat tighten. This was the man who'd been systematically destroying her life for 3 weeks. The man who'd turned her existence into a waking nightmare. And she had to serve him a drink. Hibiki. Neat. His voice was cold, controlled. The voice of a man who'd never been told no in his entire life. Nia's hands trembled as she reached for the bottle. But she kept her face blank. Professional. She poured 2 fingers of amber liquid and placed it in front of him without a word. "You don't remember me," he said. "It wasn't a question. I remember every customer who tries to cheat me," Nia replied, proud that her voice didn't shake. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or anger. With him, it was impossible to tell. "Cheat you?" He lifted the glass, swirled it slowly. "You should be more concerned about who you're cheating." Before Nia could respond, he slid a business card across the polished wood. She looked down at the elegant black card with silver lettering. Yamamoto Holdings. Her blood turned to ice. She'd seen that name before. On corporate documents. On her paycheck stubs. On the lease agreement for Eclipse. "This club," Kenji said softly, watching her face. "You love it, don't you?" Nia couldn't speak. Her mind was racing, connecting dots she'd been too blind to see. "You've worked here 3 years," he continued. "Built something real. Respect. Authority. A reputation." He took a slow sip of whiskey. "All on my family's generosity." The words hit her like a physical blow. Every promotion, every achievement, every moment she'd thought she was proving herself, making it on her own merit in this unforgiving city, it had all been built on his family's foundation. "The missing bottles," she whispered. "The fights. My frozen bank account. That was mercy," Kenji said simply. "You humiliated me in front of my men. Traditionally, you'd be dead." Nia forced herself to meet his gaze. "Then why am I still breathing?" He set down his glass and leaned forward, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Danger. Power. Control. "Because you fascinate me," he said. "No one speaks to me the way you did. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm just another man who needs to learn respect." His eyes burned into hers, and Nia saw something in their depths that terrified her more than rage or violence ever could. Obsession. "I want to understand what makes you so fearless," he continued quietly. "Or so foolish." He stood, pulled out his wallet, and dropped $500 bills on the bar for a $50 drink. "Keep the change. You'll need it." Nia watched him walk toward the exit, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She was still standing there, frozen, when her assistant manager appeared at her elbow. His face was white as paper. "Nia," he whispered. "That's Kenji Yamamoto, the Yamamoto Kai heir, the Yakuza prince." The room tilted. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The tattoos snaking up his neck, the fear in everyone's eyes, the absolute authority in his voice. She hadn't just defied a customer, she'd defied Tokyo's most dangerous man. And he wasn't here to kill her. He was here for something infinitely worse. He was interested. The days after Kenji's revelation blurred together like watercolors in rain. Nia couldn't sleep without seeing his face, couldn't eat without tasting bile, couldn't think without her mind spinning back to the same horrifying truth. She'd built her entire Tokyo life on blood money. She sat in her tiny apartment at 3 a.m., laptop screen glowing in the darkness, falling down a rabbit hole she wished she'd never found. Yamamoto Kai. The name appeared everywhere once she started looking. 40% of Tokyo's nightlife, 17 legitimate businesses that were anything but. Eclipse wasn't just owned by them, it was a washing machine for dirty money. And she'd been scrubbing their crimes clean for 3 years without knowing it. Every promotion, every paycheck, every moment she'd thought she was proving herself, earning respect through hard work. It was all a lie. She was a prop in someone else's criminal empire. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She'd stopped answering days ago, but the calls kept coming. Heavy breathing, silence, disconnection. Always the same pattern. Always leaving her skin crawling. The stalking had become suffocating. Kenji was everywhere now, not hiding anymore. Monday morning, she'd seen him at her coffee shop, sitting by the window with a newspaper he wasn't reading. Tuesday evening, he was at her gym, lifting weights with his eyes on her reflection in the mirror. Wednesday afternoon, standing across the platform at Shibuya Station, watching her board the train. Never approaching, never speaking, just watching. Black orchids arrived at her door every morning now. No notes, no explanations, just those dark, expensive flowers that smelled like funerals. She'd tried changing her routine. Left home at different times, took different routes, switched coffee shops. It didn't matter. He adapted. Like he had access to her entire life. Like he could see her through walls. Because he probably could. That realization had sent her spiraling. She'd checked her apartment for cameras. Found nothing. But that didn't mean they weren't there. She'd examined her phone for spyware. Couldn't tell if it was compromised. Everything felt violated. Everything felt watched. So she'd decided to fight back. The recording app on her phone had been running for 3 days now. Tonight, 2 of Kenji's lieutenants had come to Eclipse. Same routine as always. They'd ordered expensive bottles, occupied the VIP section, and talked too loud about shipments and territories, and money moving through channels that definitely weren't legal. She had it all. Every word. Crystal clear audio of them discussing operations that could bring down the entire Yamamoto Kai empire. It was leverage. Her only weapon in a war she'd never asked to fight. Now, at 4 a.m., she sat alone in the empty club, waiting. She knew he'd come. He always did. The door opened without sound. Kenji materialized from the shadows like he was made of them, moving to the dark VIP section with that predatory grace she'd come to recognize. He sat, silent, waiting for her to acknowledge him. Nia's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She walked to his table, hit play. His lieutenants' voices filled the silence. Dates, locations, illegal operations laid out in damning detail. Kenji's expression didn't change, not a flicker of surprise or fear. He just watched her with those cold, calculating eyes. "I know what you're doing," Nia said, hating how her voice trembled. "This recording, 1 upload, and your empire burns." He tilted his head slightly. "You think that scares me?" "It should." Then he laughed. Actually laughed. The sound dark and genuinely amused. "You're threatening me? With evidence you recorded in my club? On my property? Against my family?" He stood, moving toward her with deliberate slowness. Each step made her heart pound harder. "Do you know what I should do to you for this?" Nia forced herself to hold her ground, even though every instinct screamed to run. "You wanted to know why I'm fearless? Because I have nothing left to lose. You already took everything." He stopped inches away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell that expensive cologne mixed with something dangerous. "I haven't taken anything," he said softly. "Yet." The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could barely breathe. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "You want to know the truth, Nia? The missing bottles? I arranged it. The fights? My men started them. Your frozen accounts? 1 phone call." Rage flooded through her, white-hot and consuming. "Why?" "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." His eyes burned into hers. "That moment when you pointed at me like I was nothing. It's been 3 weeks, and I still see it every time I close my eyes." Her whole body shook now. Fury and fear and something else she didn't want to name. "I don't want to break you, Nia." he whispered, so close his breath stirred her hair. I want you to break for me willingly. He reached out slowly, took her phone from nerveless fingers. One swipe across the screen. The recording deleted. You can't fight me. You can't escape me. His thumb lingered on her phone. The question is, how long until you stop trying? Then he was gone, disappearing back into shadows like he'd never been there at all. Nia stood frozen in the empty club, dawn breaking through the windows, light spilling across the floor like blood. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. Her only weapon, gone. She needed to run. But where can you run when the devil owns the city? The taxi door slammed shut at 5 a.m., and Nia whispered the only destination that mattered, Narita Airport. She'd barely slept. Her single bag sat on her lap, passport tucked inside her jacket pocket where she could feel its weight against her heart. Everything she owned in Tokyo that mattered could fit in this one bag. Somehow, that felt like freedom. The city blurred past the window, still dark except for scattered lights. In a few hours, she'd be on a plane to Los Angeles, back to America, back to a life where she could walk down the street without wondering if she was being watched, where her bank account was hers, where she could breathe. She'd told no one, not her coworkers, not her few remaining friends, especially not him. The airport's fluorescent lights felt too bright after weeks of darkness. Nia approached the check-in counter, legs unsteady but determined. Passport, please, the agent said with a professional smile. Nia handed it over, watching the woman scan it. Seconds ticked by. The smile faltered. One moment, Miss Carter. Is something wrong? The agent's fingers flew across her keyboard, eyes narrowing at the screen. There seems to be a system error. Could you please wait here? Nia's stomach dropped. What kind of error? Just a moment, please. 5 minutes stretched into 10. Other passengers moved through their lines smoothly. Only Nia stood frozen, watching the agent make hushed phone calls. Then she saw them. 2 men in black suits, walking with purpose through the terminal. Not airport security. She knew that walk, had seen it too many times in the last 3 weeks. Miss Carter? The taller one showed her a badge too quickly for her to read. Please come with us. What is this about? You're wanted for questioning regarding theft at Eclipse nightclub. Her voice rose. That's insane. I was cleared. Nevertheless, you need to come with us. Now. People were staring. The agent wouldn't meet her eyes. Nia's hands shook as the shorter man took her bag, his grip on her elbow firm but not quite violent enough to cause a scene. I want to call someone, she said. You can make your call at the station. But they weren't heading toward any police station. The black Mercedes idling outside the terminal told her everything she needed to know. She tried to scream. The taller man leaned close, voice honey smooth. Making noise will only make this harder. For everyone. The car door closed behind her like a coffin lid. Tokyo disappeared as they drove. Not toward the city center, but away from it. Mountains rose in the distance, swallowing the horizon. An hour passed. Then another. Nia's throat was too dry to speak. Her phone sat useless in her pocket, probably tracked, definitely worthless. When the car finally stopped, she didn't recognize where they were. A traditional Japanese estate sprawled before them, all curved roofs and manicured gardens. Beautiful and terrible, ancient elegance hiding modern evil. Guards stood at intervals, not bothering to hide their weapons. Silent servants led her through sliding doors. No one looked at her directly. The hallways seemed endless, each more ornate than the last. Finally, they stopped at a room, not a cell, a bedroom. Silk screens, tatami mats, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-dusted gardens. Luxury that felt like a cage. The door closed behind her. The lock clicked from the outside. Nia stood in the center of the room, breathing hard. She'd run. She'd actually tried to run, and he'd plucked her from the sky like she was nothing. Hours crawled by. Rage gave way to fear. Fear to exhaustion. Exhaustion to cold determination. She searched every corner. The windows were barred behind decorative screens. The door was solid wood, unmovable. Night fell. She refused to sleep in the bed, sitting instead by the window, watching darkness claim the gardens. Then the door opened. Kenji stood in the doorway, dressed casually in a black sweater, looking almost human. He carried a tray, tea, rice, perfectly grilled fish. "You haven't eaten," he said, setting it down. "Kidnapping me won't make me yours." "No." He sat across from her, maintaining distance. "But it will make you listen. 1 week. 7 days of silence. 7 days of untouched meals left outside her door like offerings to a stubborn god." Nia sat on the tatami mat, staring at the garden through barred windows. Snow had begun falling 3 days ago and hadn't stopped. Everything was white, clean, suffocating. The door slid open without warning. She didn't turn around. She knew his footsteps by now. The careful, measured pace that tried so hard to seem unthreatening. "You're going to starve yourself to death out of spite?" Kenji's voice came from behind her. "Maybe. That would be inconvenient. For you or for me?" A pause. Then he sat down beside her, maintaining distance. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could smell his cologne. Cedar and something darker. "My father beat me when I was 7, he said quietly. "I'd hidden food for a stray dog in the garden. He found out, made me watch while he killed it." Nia's jaw clenched. She didn't want to hear this. Didn't want him to be human. The lesson was simple. Compassion is weakness. Attachment is vulnerability. Everything you love can be used against you. "So you learned to love nothing," she said flatly. "I learned to take everything instead. Control what you can't trust. Own what you can't afford to lose. And that's supposed to make me understand why you kidnapped me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No, nothing makes that right. I just need you to understand that I don't know how to do this any other way." Nia finally turned to look at him. Really look at him. The bruise on his jaw was yellowing now, 5 days old. His eyes had shadows underneath that hadn't been there before. "Do what?" she asked. "Want someone without destroying them." The words hit her chest like a physical thing. She looked away, back to the garden. "You're already destroying me, just slower than usual." "I know." His voice cracked slightly. "That's why I'm letting you walk the garden now. No guards within sight. Just me. I'm still your prisoner." Yes. At least he was honest. They sat in silence as snow continued to fall. Against her will, against every instinct screaming at her to stay angry, Nia felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not even close. But understanding, maybe. The barest hint of it. "Why do you keep fighting me?" Kenji asked eventually. "Because the moment I stop, I become what you want me to be, a possession. What if I want you to be my equal?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Equals don't kidnap each other." "Then teach me. How do equals treat each other?" The question was so genuine, so lost, that Nia's anger faltered. She looked at him again. This man who commanded armies, who made grown men shake with fear, who could buy or destroy anything he wanted. And he didn't know how to simply be with someone. "They start by asking permission," she said quietly. "They respect boundaries. They let the other person leave if they want to. And if letting you leave means losing you forever, then you were never meant to have me." His hands clenched on his knees. "I can't accept that. That's your problem, not mine." They walked to the garden later that afternoon. Kenji kept his promise. No visible guards, though Nia knew they were there, hidden. She was still a bird in a gilded cage, just a bigger one now. The snow crunched under their feet. Nia wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "Here." Kenji started to remove his coat. "Don't." She held up a hand. "I don't want your coat. I don't want your gifts. I don't want anything from you except my freedom." He stopped mid-motion, coat half off. For a moment, he looked genuinely hurt. Then his face hardened again. "Walls going back up. You'll catch cold." "Let me..." They continued walking in tense silence. "Why me?" Nia asked finally. The question had been burning in her for weeks. You could have anyone. Women who would actually want this life, this world. Why fixate on the one person who wants nothing to do with you? Kenji stopped walking, stared out at the white expanse of garden. "Because everyone else bows," he said simply. "Presidents, CEOs, politicians, criminals, they all bow. They fear me or use me or want something from me. But you," he turned to face her, "you pointed your finger at me like I was just a man who needed to learn respect. Not a monster, not a king, just a man. You are just a man. No one's treated me like one since I was a child." Something in his voice made Nia's throat tight. She hated it. Hated that she was starting to see him as something other than her captor. "That doesn't make this okay," she said firmly. "I know. It doesn't make me yours. I know." "Then let me go." "I can't." He looked at her with devastating honesty. "I know I should. I know it's the right thing. But I can't. Not yet. Not until." "Until what?" "Until you see me the way I saw you that night. As someone worth fighting for." Nia's breath caught. The audacity. The absolute audacity of this man to think. But as she stood there in the falling snow, looking at him, look at her, with that desperate hope in his eyes, she realized something terrifying. She'd hesitated. When he asked if she'd run, she'd hesitated. She should have said yes immediately, should have screamed it, but she'd paused, just for a heartbeat, and he'd noticed. They both knew what that meant. "I need to go inside," Nia said abruptly, turning away. She walked quickly back toward the estate, boots crunching too loudly in the snow. She didn't look back, couldn't look back. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. Down the hall, she heard raised voices, shouting in Japanese. Kenji and his father, arguing again. She pressed her ear to the door. "She's an outsider!" The older man's voice, harsh and disgusted. "She's mine!" Kenji, fierce and possessive. More shouting, something crashing. Then Kenji's voice, cold as death itself. "Touch her, and I'll burn this family to the ground." Silence. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. He was protecting her, choosing her over his own father, his own legacy. But at what cost? The next morning, Kenji entered with fresh bruises on his jaw and knuckles split open. "Your father did that?" The words came out before Nia could stop them. "He thinks I've lost control." Kenji's smile was grim. "Maybe I have." For the first time, Nia felt something other than fear or anger toward him, something dangerously close to concern. "Why me?" she asked again, quieter this time. "You could have anyone. This would be easier with anyone else. Because easy isn't worth having." He looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. "Do you know what it's like to be feared by everyone? To never know if loyalty is real or just survival instinct? To wonder if anyone would stay if you weren't dangerous?" Yes, Nia thought. She knew. Different context, different life. But she knew what it meant to always be questioning, always wondering if people saw you or just what you represented. "I fought for 3 years to matter in Tokyo," she heard herself say. "Every day proving I belonged, that I was more than just the foreign woman who didn't understand her place. And you never bowed." "No, I never did." They looked at each other across the small room. Two people who'd spent their lives fighting to be seen as something more than what the world decided they were. Dangerous territory. 3 days later, during their afternoon walk, Kenji stopped suddenly. "If I unlocked your door tonight," he said, not looking at her, "would you run?" Nia's breath caught. "What?" "If I left it unlocked, no guards, would you run?" She should say yes, should scream yes. Yes, but she'd hesitated, again. "You hesitated," Kenji observed, voice careful. "You shouldn't have noticed. I notice everything about you." They stood there as snow fell around them, breath visible in the cold air. Neither moved closer, neither moved away. The space between them felt electric, dangerous, Impossible. That night, Nia tested her door. Unlocked. She opened it slowly. The hallway was empty, dark. She could see the side door that led to the forest. She could run, flag down a car on the mountain road, get to the embassy, go home. Freedom was right there. She stood in the doorway, one foot in her prison, one foot toward escape, and she couldn't move. Why wasn't she running? Kenji's words echoed in her mind. I'm already in your blood. No, that couldn't be true. She was just tired, confused. Stockholm Syndrome. That's all this was. But as she stood there, frozen between captivity and freedom, she knew that was a lie. She closed the door, locked it from the inside, slid down against it, and put her head in her hands. What was happening to her? Through her window, she saw him, Kenji, standing in the garden below, staring up at her room through the falling snow. He'd known she wouldn't run, and that terrified her more than anything he'd done so far. The morning sun barely touched the snow-covered garden when two guards appeared at Nia's door. Their faces were blank, but she saw the tension in their shoulders. Yamamoto-sama requests your presence, one said in clipped English. Nia's stomach dropped. Kenji entered behind them, his expression grave in a way she'd never seen before. The casual warmth from their recent conversations had vanished, replaced by something cold and formal. My father has called a family council, he said quietly. About you. What does that mean? His jaw tightened. It means they'll decide your fate, and mine. 20 minutes later, Nia found herself walking through corridors she'd never seen before. The estate seemed to darken as they descended, the elegant screens and gardens giving way to older architecture. Traditional, severe. This was the heart of the Yamamoto power, and she could feel it pressing against her lungs. The council room was massive, lit by paper lanterns that cast dancing shadows on walls decorated with centuries-old swords. 12 men sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms, all dressed in formal black hakama. Their faces were carved from stone, eyes tracking her every movement. At the center sat Kenji's father, Takeshi Yamamoto, silver-haired, with a scar running from temple to jaw. He radiated violence, like heat from a forge. When his gaze locked onto Nia, she felt the weight of every person he'd killed. She was the only woman, the only non-Japanese person, the only one not bowing. Takeshi began speaking in rapid Japanese, his voice like gravel. Nia couldn't understand the words, but the contempt was universal. Kenji stood rigid beside her, fists clenched. An elderly man translated, his English precise and cold. You have brought shame on this family. This foreigner has made you weak. Another elder leaned forward. She possesses forbidden knowledge of our operations. She cannot leave. The implication hung in the air like smoke. They weren't discussing whether to let her go. They were discussing how to dispose of her. Kenji stepped forward. Nia stays, under my protection. Takeshi laughed, the sound like breaking glass. He switched to English, his accent thick but deliberate. Protection? You sound like a boy in love. Call it what you want. She's under my claim. An elder with a white beard stood, trembling with rage. She's a liability, an outsider. She disrespected you publicly, and now you defend her? Kenji's voice dropped to that deadly calm Nia had learned to recognize. She did what no one else dared. She treated me like a man, not a monster. That takes more courage than any of you possess. Takeshi rose slowly, his presence filling the room. He walked toward Nia with measured steps, each one echoing off the wooden floors. You've bewitched my son, made him forget his duty. Nia met his eyes, refusing to flinch. She found her voice, steadier than she felt. I've done nothing but refuse to be afraid of him. If that's bewitching, your son is easier to manipulate than you think. The room erupted in gasps. Several elders reached for weapons. Takeshi's hand moved to the ceremonial sword at his side, and Nia knew she'd just signed her death warrant. Kenji moved like lightning, stepping between them. Father, don't. Step aside, boy. No. Kenji's voice carried through the room. Nia will be my partner, my equal in all things. Laughter erupted, harsh and mocking. Equal? An elder spat. A black woman? An outsider? She will stand beside me when I inherit this empire. Takeshi's face darkened to a shade Nia had never seen on human skin. I will not allow this disgrace. Kenji's hand moved to his own sword, his eyes never leaving his father's. Then you'll have to kill me first. The temperature in the room plummeted. Father and son faced each other across 3 feet and a lifetime of violence. Every man in the room held their breath. All eyes turned to Nia. She could reject him now, maybe save herself. But she saw it clearly. Kenji was risking everything. His family, his inheritance, his life. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. If you want me, prove I'm not just another thing you own. Silence crashed over the room like a wave. Nia locked eyes with Kenji, her heart hammering. Kneel. Takeshi's roar shook the walls. Insolence! Someone kill her now! Kenji drew his blade in one fluid motion, turning to face his father. Steel sang in the quiet. Anyone who touches her goes through me. Father and son stood ready to fight. Decades of brutality crystallized into this single moment. But Nia spoke again, stronger this time. Kenji Yamamoto, if you want me as your equal, prove it now. In front of everyone who says I'm beneath you. She paused, letting the weight settle. Kneel. The room held its breath. Kenji's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. His father watched with murder blazing in his eyes. The elders waited to see if their heir would commit the ultimate disgrace. Nia's heart threatened to break through her ribs. Had she pushed too far? Would he kill her for this public humiliation? Kenji's hand loosened on his sword. His eyes met hers, and something in them broke. Something that had been locked away his entire life, finally shattering. He sheathed his blade. Oh God, what was he doing? The room held its breath. Kenji Yamamoto, heir to the Yamamoto Kai Empire, lowered himself. First, one knee touched the polished floor. Then, both. The council chamber erupted. Elders jumped to their feet, shouting in Japanese. One drew his sword halfway before another grabbed his arm. Takeshi's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. Get up! His father roared. Get up! Kenji didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Nia's. You told me to kneel, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. I'm kneeling. The room fell into shocked silence. Nia Carter. His words carried weight, finality. You are my equal, not my possession, not my prize. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple black cord threaded with a small silver crane charm. Not a ring, not a chain, just a symbol. In my culture, cranes represent loyalty and eternal devotion. I give this freely. He held it up. No chains, no ownership. Nia's throat tightened. Tears burned behind her eyes. Tears she didn't know she'd been holding back. You can walk away right now. Kenji continued. I won't stop you. But if you stay, stay because you choose me, not because you fear me. Enough. Takeshi lunged forward, his sword singing as it left its sheath. The blade arced toward Nia. Kenji moved like lightning, not to attack, but to shield. He positioned his body between the sword and Nia. Arms spread wide. Father, his voice was steady, you'll have to kill me first. The blade stopped inches from Kenji's chest. Takeshi's arm trembled, whether from rage or restraint. Nia couldn't tell. You would die for this outsider? Takeshi spat the words like poison. I would die to finally live, Kenji answered quietly. Something in his tone made Nia move. She stepped around him, placing herself directly in front of Takeshi. The old man's eyes widened slightly, whether in respect or fury, she wasn't sure. You raised a son who only knows how to take, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. But he's trying to learn how to give. That's braver than anything you've ever done. She turned to Kenji, still kneeling behind her. Stand up. He looked uncertain, vulnerable, like a man balanced on a knife's edge. Stand up as my equal, she continued. Not as my master. Not as my servant. Kenji rose slowly. Hope and fear fought for dominance in his expression. Nia took the black cord from his hand and tied it around her wrist. The silver crane caught the light. I choose you, Kenji Yamamoto. She paused, held his gaze. But I choose me too. What does that mean? His voice was barely a whisper. It means I'm not joining your world. We're building a new one. She extended her hand. Where respect isn't taken, it's earned. Where power doesn't come from fear, it comes from choice. Partners? He stared at her hand like it was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. Then he took it, fingers curling around hers gently, carefully, like he was finally learning how to hold something without crushing it. Partners. Takeshi made a sound of disgust and stormed from the room. Half the elders followed, their disapproval hanging in the air like smoke. But some remained. An elderly woman approached, her face lined with age and wisdom. Kenji's grandmother. You have fire, girl, she said in accented English, the hint of a smile on her lips. This family needs fire. The tide was turning. 6 months later, Nia stood behind the bar at Eclipse, watching the last customer leave. The club was hers now, officially, co-owned with Kenji. They were transforming it into something legitimate, something clean. It wasn't perfect. Kenji still struggled with his need for control. Nia still fought waves of mistrust. But every morning, they chose each other again. Any regrets? Kenji asked from across the bar. She considered the question, then smiled. About defying a Yakuza boss and nearly dying? Several. And I'd do it again. Her smile widened. Someone had to teach you to pay your tab. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was genuine, free, completely human. That lesson cost me everything. No, Nia corrected, squeezing his hand across the polished wood. It gave you everything. Outside, Tokyo's neon lights painted the streets in color. Inside Eclipse, two people who should never have met built something impossible together. Darkness didn't consume light. It learned to kneel before it. And in kneeling, it finally stood tall. If you want a love story that defies all odds, that challenges power and redefines respect, then hit that subscribe button right now for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stories about strong women who refuse to bow. Stories about love that transforms even the darkest hearts. Did Naya's courage inspire you? Did Kenji's transformation move you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us what you think. Thank you.